that only really Corki has been the one taken off, and it's a nice flex between both mid lane and bot lane. Something tells me that it might not be one of the marksman picks, so that Weibo can leave the entire table open to pick from.
Yeah, I mean, hey man, Varus looked pretty good in that 1v1. Am I
It did look pretty good.
Didn't
Are
look
you
too
advocating
bad.
for Varus top for ZDZ in this opening game?
I mean, I'm not against it. I'll say that. I think
For
Varus top is a very
base.
powerful pick, but for the time being, it's just going to be Ashe first pick, and do expect that to be an Assum pick, but don't be too surprised if it ends up in Wink's hands. Don't forget, we've seen historically quite a bit of Ashe out of Wink whenever it's applicable to a draft. Very consistent Ashe player at that as well. But for Weibo, it seems like hovering over this Ksante for a little while, they've probably had their mind set on that, and it's about what the pairing is going to end up being with it. Will it be the jungler? Will it just be the AD to match? Again, Varus up and available, something that Light also himself a very competent player at, despite the display from ZDZ in that 1v1 just a moment ago. But we'll see where Weibo decide to go, just because, again, Ksante says to me, very stable, potentially slow on the top side. Bottom side, though, could be very quick as we get this Kalista lock in. Very aggressive, and on my mind immediately, despite being into the Ashe, I'm starting to think what the lane swap scenario is going to potentially look like with the Ksante there, with Kalista on the other side.
Personally, I would not be a fan of a lane swap, not because I think it's ideal or not, but because that means we would get not as much fun interaction between the two teams. But you know, that is just me. The Herald of Arcane, Mr. Viktor himself, has been locked in for EDG as he was available from the ban phase. I think he's been banned not a ton, but quite an amount throughout the group stage. And the top lane pick for CDZ will remain hidden for now. More than likely, this Wukong will just be a jungle pick for Xiaohao. And that leaves Weibo Gaming to either lock in their jungle of choice, or if they want to get their mid lane answer into the Viktor right now before the ban phase comes out.
Yeah, I think mid lane, not too bad. Jungle as well. I was about to say, you could also go support, and if you're happy with locking in something like a Neeko, ban away two options that are going to make your life kind of miserable on the bottom side.
Sure.
And just kind of be happy with that. I also just want to call out, ZDZ is a player of many, many strange things as the Braum ban comes through, and that makes a lot of sense when you're dealing with an Ashe and you probably want to go in. Practiced Varus top in solo queue at the minute. Wukong is a matchup that's actually pretty good into the Ksante 1v1.
Really?
The issue kind of arrives, though, that we're in pro play. If you get lane swapped on them, Wukong kind of just becomes a bit of a nothing burger in the top lane because he just doesn't have the economy to operate. So I will just plant that seed and leave it there for the time being. But I do expect it to be a Xiaohao pick. It's just that I have seen this matchup a few times out of high elo solo queue, and it tends to be pretty one-sided. This Wukong, when he actually gets lane economy, deals way more damage than he does in the jungle, and that's a scary thought to think about, even into a Ksante. As I expect this to just be, you know, they might actually throw out the Sejuani ban or the no ban. I'm not sure what's happened there, just because of the hover previously, just to protect themselves from the potential of Ashe. Sejuani run down with immediate support. When we get confirmation of what that missing ban is for, we will let you know. But Nocturne will also be the final ban. Very scary to deal with, right? Right now, Weibo don't necessarily have a lot of engage or setup. Vi obviously does both those things. Nocturne is an enabler of kind of just making it a lot easier for that Neeko to access the backline with a flank.
Yep.
And maybe that no ban was to enable Weibo themselves to pick up the Sejuani for that engage.
They basically told EDG, hey, you either give us Sejuani or Nocturne on this rotation, you pick your poison. And I think EDG made the right call, because at least without the paranoia, you can still see when a potential Neeko pop blossom is going to take effect, or when anyone else is trying to flank you if Ksante comes in through a TP. Now, EDG, they are prepared for a lane swap if it does happen, Jamada, because the Udyr has been locked in, which we have seen as kind of one of those champions that can thrive in that scenario. With the Seraphine, though, now, I don't know if we saw any Seraphine throughout the group stage. There was one game. It was a loss. I don't know who piloted it, but I won't call them out for now. But we'll see if Wing can make a difference here. This is a lot of decent team fighting bruisers on the side of EDG, and with how long these fights want to be played out with champions like Viktor and AShe, I think having something like a Seraphine to give you multiple heals and shields and utility throughout the team fights makes you a powerful juggernaut composition.
Yeah, it does, but it also has just given Xiaohu a very, very potent ultimate as well on the opposite side to try and chain in some of that engage. So I am very, very... I don't want to use the cursed word, but I'm very interested to see what EDG are going to do outside of the first 10 minutes of this game, right? I think a lane swap is going to be relatively easy to play out, right? You have Udyr, that's fine. Udyr's going to do the thing where you just walk mid, get level 2, walk to bot, and he just picks whether he gets to clear the wave with the empowered R or, you know, tank up a dive with the empowered W. Weibo, again, it feels like they're the ones with all the agency here. They're the one of the Kalista Neeko lane, they're the one of the Sejuani, and Sylas as well as a 2v2 in the mid jungle. Viktor is, you know, we haven't seen him for a while competitively. He's here because, of course, of the recent changes. He's not really a champion for a little while. Like, it takes time for him to come online. So with all of this innate scaling and very big lack of early damage, I'm very worried about what EDG are going to actually be able to get done in this first 10 minutes. It's going to be a lot about, I said it earlier actually, but quoting the other side for Weibo, losing gracefully in these first 10 minutes and getting the gold where you need it, so that once, you know, Herald spawns up or the third dragon spawns up, you actually have an opportunity to play the game, because otherwise I feel like Weibo have everything they need in their arsenal to play out an early game aggressively, stomp it out, and then turn it into a mid-game transition where they just win.
True. And the cool thing for us, as we were kind of noting at the top of pre-show before getting into draft, one of the big things we wanted to look at for Weibo Gaming over the course of this series is this is our very first look at this new roster being put together, with Tian and Hong coming in as the new jungle and support. And this is a chance for showing how well they can synergize and play together on the map, where you are kind of expected to be the playmaker. You're the ones with the agency in your hand in the first half of the game. Let's see how aggressive, let's see how proactive they are against a team that is going to fare better the more time they are given to scale up.
Absolutely. And for me, I think the funny contrast and comparison is already here. Spoke about Tien being a very, you know, slow by the books jungler. At the very least, that's how he operated on top esports throughout a lot of this year. He's on the Sejuani. Through and through, just called Hong a psychopath in my analysis, and I'm happy to do things like that. On the Neeko with the Kalista pairing, right? So a lot of early aggression is to be expected from this duo. We are going to be getting the lane swap out from Weibo. So we'll see how EDG respond, what this bottom lane state is going to end up being, how they stack this wave, and then of course ZDZ tanking the lane swap on the other side, and we'll track how homeless or not homeless he's going to end up being. As you can see, he's walking down towards that mid lane, should look to try and share some of the XP with Angel, hit level 2, and then try and catch that stacked wave up on the top side.
Yep. For the credit of EDG, they managed to plant a ward onto Tian's blue buff, so they have information on where he started, knowing that he went with a wolf start since he already has 4 CS to his name. And for Weibo Gaming, this jungler will be trying to path towards the top side on that, playing towards the strong side where Light and Hong are going to be slowly stacking up that wave. And as you called it out, if ZDZ is going to try and catch that wave, he's actually teleporting right away, because they stack that wave and crash it super fast. So CDZ just wants to make sure that he can catch all the XP. More than likely, he's not going to get that much gold from it, but at least he won't fall that far behind in lane.
Yeah, so whilst I was looking at the mid lane, the interesting thing was that Tien and Breve did the entire bottom side quadrant together, instead of kind of like pathing up towards the top side and crashing on the third wave and then trying to deny ZDZ that wave with a dive. So we've now kind of ended up in a situation where both top laners are going to be able to catch a fair bit of CS, but still, I feel like Breve maybe getting the slightly worse end. ZDZ, I don't feel like he can be dove from 100 to 0, even with these 3. If he can get his passive back up, that empowered W is such a nuisance to deal with. still a few seconds away, but they're gonna start this dive off now.
All right, Hong tanks up the turret. Aggro ZDZ gets knocked up. The spears. There's that empowered we were talking about. Hong, wait a minute. He's got the minion Neeko passive.
Oh, but the healing.
But ZDZ's still healing because he's autoing Tian under the tower. But eventually, Weibo Gaming pull off the dive with no deaths on their side. First blood goes over to Light.
And honestly, a majority of that play just has to be credited to Hong using that cannon minion tech, right? Tanks up so many tower shots, and it just enables them to get through ZDZ's health bar. Even though he does so much work in staying alive for so long, it doesn't matter because Hong's just there tanking up maybe 5, 6 tower shots throughout the entirety of that dive. ZDZ can't do anything to survive.
And that advantage that ZDZ might have had being able to get to the minion waves now seems to have disappeared completely because, yeah.
4, 5, 6, 7.
That is just crazy.
Yeah. That mechanic might need to be looked into, perhaps, as a ZDZ unfortunate victim of that play, but it is very unique to Neeko, of course. Not really much he can do. He did what he could. Still got a fair bit of XP, but of course will still be denied and didn't have teleport. Teleported back to the top side to catch the initial wave earlier on, so will be set a little bit further behind than his counterpart Breve on the bottom side, who's been relatively undisturbed as he farms up all these minions.
Yeah, you know, when you have Sejuani, Kalista, and Neeko as your diving trio versus the power of AShe, Seraphine, Wukong, you definitely have an easier time of pulling that off. And for EDG, even if they wanted to pull off the dive, I mean, it's just, you don't have guaranteed CC to keep Breathe in place so that it can be a successful operation here. And now ZDZ, as we were, you know, highlighting before, what might have been an advantage for him now has been evened up thanks to the efforts of Weibo Gaming's trio and Wink. I mean, he's been called towards the top side of the map because he knows that ZDZ is now, I don't want to say a liability, but he is prone to getting put further behind in this matchup.
Yeah, it's just going to be very difficult to play around. And again, this is why I was a bit skeptical of EDG's draft coming into it, because where is their agency really? And especially if they get lane swapped on, it just feels like, yeah, there just isn't any. You're relying on your scaling, you're relying on eventually ZDZ just getting tanky enough with some of the Seraphine shields that he can be frontline. And right now, Weibo doing everything in their power to deny this from happening. Another stacked wave, Xiaohu's here, and Tian's even on the way, but they're starting this dive off now.
I mean, he can grab the Seraphine ulti and have access to an Encore before Wink is even level 6 himself. And now Tian is going to roam on over. This is a 4-on-2. Encore hits onto both targets here. Wink is trying to body block so that ZDZ can survive, but he will fall. Xiaohu takes it, and Hong once again, power of the cannon minion, allows Neeko to take up as many turret shots as he needs to, and this dive will take no prisoners from the side of Weibo Gaming unless Angel can find some salvation and redemption kill, but everyone else gets out alive because what can Viktor do this early on? What is he going to do? Flash and Chaos Storm with practically no items under his belt? So this is a massive win for Weibo.
Huge win for Weibo. Execution at first was a little bit scuffed, but afterwards it was pretty much picture perfect. I don't think there was really any other major issue. Light here, you can see, you know, tanks up 2 more tower shots than he has to because Hong had to back out because he tanked tower too early after getting rooted. But Xiaohu here, 2-man ult, allows for Tian to also come in and help pick up Wink. It's just an excellent execution on this dive. And again, if Hong doesn't turn into a minion, that tower shot, you know, there's arguments that another would have killed him. So very, very good job. Weibo walk out with everything they want, but they might not get all of these grubs despite all of these successful plays on the top side. As we come out of the replay, EDG are here on the grubs first. They don't quite have numbers for the time being, but the collapse is going to come in shortly.
They need to save an Angel. Hong gets nailed by the arrow despite flashing away. Xiaohao picks up that one. But Tian is going to take this moment to sneak over one of these grubs while the rest of EDG formed a death squad towards that top side. Xiaohu has returned to the river, takes the arrow for himself, But I don't think there's going to be an engage from Weibo Gaming. It's just going to try to use the arrow to disengage, but Tien's got nowhere to run, no time to flash, as Xiaohao pulls the trigger with that Cyclone, now looking for Xiaohu, and Weibo Gaming might have bit off more they could chew. Xiaohao dashes over the wall, thanks to the upscone abduct, and breathes to force the flash, and Weibo Gaming don't drop any more losses in that fight.
It's 2 grubs and a few kills there for EDG. That's not too bad given how things were beginning to transpire on the top side of the map. For Weibo, just a little bit slow back to the grubs, right? Having just made that top side play, it makes sense. EDG would be back out onto the map quicker than they would be. And it's a nice injection of gold for EDG. When you actually take a look at the top side of your screen, it's only 200 gold between these two teams, despite all of the very, very successful dives so far for Weibo. And it all comes off the back of this pick up here, right? Trying to actually find their way onto Angel. They're not capable of 100-0ing him, and then Hong unfortunately just flashes into the arrow. Not much more else to say than that. And even though Tien steals away this one grub, they get collapsed on after the next grub goes down. Tien just stepping a little bit too far forward, and Xiaohao picks his man with some of the slows. The damage back is okay from Weibo, but again, it's not coordinated at the moment. There's no big Neeko ultimate to nail in the backside of EDG here. The carries, the very squishy champions of EDG, so no other dive threat available.
And for EDG, even though that it's still very early on into this game where this composition hasn't really reached its full potential, its full power, you can already see a little preview of how this composition is going to be playing out these fights. As long as these guys are together and grouped up and bunched up, they all enable each other and facilitate each other to their maximum potential. And for Weibo Gaming, I think they just disrespected that a little too much, getting a little too excited after the, fruition of their first 7.5 minutes of gameplay so far. Now, let's see if Weibo Gaming can kind of rein in the horses a little bit and continue what was working for them. Because as you mentioned before, the gold lead has now been shored up thanks to EDG's efforts.
Could be seeing a play here mid lane.
Nice. Glacial Prison onto Assum. Xiaohao will try to deter the engage. Nice use of the Encore to lock up Light, but he takes out Xiaohao before they can get any damage back. Light is below 200 HP, and Hong might have gone a little too far forward. Assum using the power of those arrows in the slow, but Tian will now body block using his own body. Light goes in a little too far, but they take out 2 for the effort. And for EDG's bot lane getting absolutely obliterated, Weibo Gaming will walk away from the fight victorious.
3 for 1 for Weibo, and I mean, initially, after EDG get the first kill, you would have expected them to back up, but again, kind of over-chased on that exchange and get punished for it. It is Weibo that initiate this play, though, right? Sejuani ultimate comes in. Assum, though, not in really any massive amount of danger. The ultimates here, massive on both sides. Just about everyone gets slapped down. Weibo, though, happy to kind of chase in and Assum, just gets a little bit too anti, feeling like he can pick up Hung, and the damage just isn't quite there, unfortunately. And even though Light does go down, again, 3 for 1, the final exchange, it's definitely not worth it as we come out of the replay into a pause. And we'll see how long this one will take. Hopefully a short one at best.
Well, this gives us a chance to kind of recap and get a general overview of how the game is progressing so far. That was a decent shutdown off from Light, but for the side of Weibo Gaming, they can be thankful that it went over to the Seraphine and not the Ashe, which would have been more appreciated for EDG's efforts. But, you have a 4-1 Kalista that is, snowballing quite effectively so far for Weibo. They did not get the first dragon, credit to EDG for picking up a majority of the objectives, while Weibo Gaming were kind of giving ZDZ the business and the top lane island treatment. But for Weibo Gaming, do we need to see them now prioritize strictly dragons over the next few minutes, or are we just going to see them continuously try to stat check EDG in these lanes?
I think both are very viable. Dragons will definitely give a much more overlooming threat to EDG, but EDG already having picked up that first dragon just buys them so much extra time for the potential of scaling. So I think EDG are fine as long as they're the ones that keep their distance, right? I'm not really sure there's too much Weibo can do about it, because remember, it's Weibo that have to, engage. It's Weibo, the onus is on them to force plays and actually make things happen. EDG are the ones with all the wave clear and the ranged engage, so they can kind of just sit back for the time being and wait for those next couple of items to roll in. Right, first items across the board for the important members of EDG have already come through as 1v1 on the bottom side here. All out's been called.
And ZDZ will just run away.
Yep.
Awesome matchup. Now, arrow from Assum hits Tien straight dead in the face, but no one else from EDG can safely walk up and threaten this objective. So that's going to be 4 Void Grubs picked up in total for Weibo Gaming. You know, credit to Tien for being able to steal 1 in the previous rotation. This will at least give them some extra turret splitting pushing power. And for Weibo Gaming now, they have to find a way to regroup back into mid lane. I don't know if through the river is the safest way for you, Xiaohu, but Tien forced to use the Glacier Prison to make sure that his mid laner is not completely dead to rights, and EDG, for now, have control of the mid wave, and they get the first rotation over to the second dragon of the game.
Yeah, and I mean, again, if they pick up the second dragon, it's a big deal, because then there's just there is no soul threat. And I mean, with Tien on the top side, it seems like that's just going to be the case. So there's 2 early dragons to the scaling side of EDG. Weibo, despite all of the early skirmishing power that their champions can be afforded, just haven't been able to find the time to, or haven't made the time to pick up those dragons. But this TP is going to come down. There's 3 members here and ready to dive ZDZ.
He flashes away, tries to buy as much time as he can, but with 4 members diving you, I don't know how long you can last, but credit to EDG. They bought enough time for Angel to pick up first brick on the other side of the map. So, Jamada, EDG, they're getting the objective game a little slightly better than Weibo Gaming. They're making use of hitting turrets faster than Weibo Gaming have, who picked up the 4 Void Grubs. I feel like we should be a little concerned for how Weibo Gaming's acceleration of the game state is going so far, because it's not going fast enough against the scaling composition like EDG.
No, it's not. And, you know, for the time being, the gold lead is nice. We'll again continue to track where Weibo are able to make things happen. A lot of that gold is inside of Light, right? We spoke about how we wanted him to kind of maybe take a little bit more of a central role inside of this Weibo roster, and the changes so far certainly has been 4-1-3, and on his way to that second item. Weibo have to make good use of this Kalista for the next few minutes, otherwise I feel like Light's usefulness is certainly on a timer as a Kalista into things like Wukong, into all of this range slow from Wink and Assum on AShe and Seraphine, respectively. Weibo need to put their foot down and really find a foothold in this game before things start to really roll out of control here and EDG have too much scaling on their side.
Yeah, and you can already see, for Light's credit, how aggressive he is trying to play. You know, a lot of the early skirmishes and the all-ins, you're not seeing Light completely, you know, panic out of a fight. He is going forward, and he is even willing to risk his life, which has already happened once in the shutdown going over to Wink. But if Weibo Gaming can continue to rely on Light jumping forward, as Xiaohu is going to send an arrow mid lane, sails on wide. Doesn't look like any target is going to hit. It looks like they were aiming for Angel to see if Breathe could get that all out. Little shuffle into the turret and just get a free pick that way, or burn a flash, but no dice.
No dice for the time being. Always nice to see those attempts come through. And, you know, normally I actually spoke about AShe being a very proactive pick. I'm not necessarily surprised we haven't seen proactivity out of EDG, but I wonder when they feel like they will start to be able to get that proactivity out of the pick, right?
Sure.
Again, I do anticipate we're realistically looking at a 2-item setup here for EDG. Second item for Angel, second item for Assum. That Mikhail's Blessing is in for Wink, you know, there to cleanse away that Sejuani ult. So realistically, again, I just assume EDG sit here, wave clear. AShe Seraphine in the mid lane, Viktor on the side lane. He can just sit back, and even if Weibo try and start up an objective like Baron in 4 minutes time, you've got the Hawk shot. You're going to have all of these vision, you know, resources to really make sure that your entrances are pretty much information filled as they can be. For the time being, though, Weibo trying to break this mid lane tier 1.
Whoa. Well, Light was forced to cleanse the AShe arrow, but the layering the CC from Wink was pretty threatening. Had anyone else from EDG been in range to follow up, they might have been able to force more out of Weibo Gaming's side, since he was stunned up for just a brief moment. But no, EDG will be content that I at least traded one ultimate that is a fairly low cooldown for a summoner spell off of light, a minute and a half before the third dragon spawning, and 3 minutes away before Baron spawns. I want to take this time, Jamada, as I think both of these teams will not be fighting for a bit, to remind all of our viewers at home that now that we're in the playoff bracket stage, we are playing full fearless mode. So that means after this game, none of these champions will be available to pick from going forward in the series.
Yep, that's true fearless mode. So again, very kind of exciting from EDG to come out with things like the Seraphine support early on, because now it just means that, you know, game 2, game 3, we just end up with Nautilus and Leona and the fun stuff we've seen for.
You get that Braum again, yeah.
Yeah, you get the Braum again, hell yeah. Like, lock that in. That's what gets me going when I see support matchups, man.
You don't have to lie to me, you know, it's understandable, you know. I think you've already done your fair share with saying how you are such a #1 fan of Weibo Gaming earlier. You know, I did appreciate that.
Yeah, I love Weibo. Weibo are amazing. Yeah, that's the extent of my love for them. That's all I'll exclaim for right now. But I mean, I do kind of love how EDG are playing against Weibo right now. Can't say I love much of how Weibo are kind of navigating this mid game, but I don't blame them. They're really being kept at an arm's length here by EDG. EDG just kind of fulfilling their role. They're really understanding what the win cons are for Weibo, and they're doing an excellent job of denying that away. And as they start up this dragon, this is where it could get dicey. This is the opportunity really for Weibo to try and pull the trigger and find a successful fight.
There's some good wards for TP flanks if Xiaohu wants to pull the trigger, and that's what exactly he is going to do. Not sure which ultimate he's going to grab, but if he's got the pick of the litter, Encore would be great from this angle, and AShe Arrow could single one target. Hong goes in, Pop Blossom on a 3. Here comes the fight. Xiaohu tries to flank, but EDG immediately turn on to the flanker, and Xiaohu is getting singled out by Xiaohao. He's forced to flash over the wall, but Weibo Gaming pushed through the other side of the fight, taking out the main frontliner ZDZ, and now it's a 5-on-4 advantage for the side of Weibo.
Yeah, I mean, Weibo, this was their opportunity, right? They've got this big gold lead. There's that IM advantage on light. This was the window they needed to pick up a team fight win, and they do just that. EDG, I think, just overplayed their hand a little bit. I think they've been so comfortable. They've coasted through the last 10 minutes because of how some of these skirmishes have played out, that they just felt like the setup was there. And frankly, it wasn't too bad once they'd shut down Xiaohu's flank, but it's just Hung getting this 3-man ultimate on the front line and really buying the space that Weibo needed, along with Xiaohu, for, again, light to just open up, right? Takes down the frontliner. There's not really much CDZ can do. He's just being Udyr in the middle of 3 members. But as we come out of the replay, Assum's dead.
And it doesn't stop. The momentum has started for Weibo Gaming, and now multiple summoner spells were used in that previous fight. So they find Assum a little too far forward, immediately pouncing on the summoner-less AShe. And now Weibo Gaming, they have an opportunity to at least get control of Baron. I don't think they'll start it up, or at least...
No, I think they could.
I'm a liar.
Has teleport. This is a pretty good angle. It's a 2-IM Kalista on, you know, the 20-minute mark. This Baron is, you know, tankier than older iterations, but still very easy to take down. I just don't think there's anything that EDG can do about this. Assum can send out a hawk shot on an arrow. That's going to give them a little bit of information, but at 5k already, Raafaa, this thing's gone.
Xiaohao would have to pull off a miracle, 2k HP. He can't get into the pit. Hong doing a great job of body blocking him and ensuring he does not get into the club. Weibo Gaming now should be able to have a clean reset on this Baron, and still 3.5 minutes before the next dragon spawns. And the fact that Weibo Gaming not only stalled out the fight to get the third dragon means that they don't have to deal with a potential soul point for EDG. Weibo Gaming have now seemingly gained firm control of the game, a solid 5,000 gold lead to boot, and at a better time, or probably the best time to do it, because this is now where those 2 item spikes are coming online for EDG. If Weibo Gaming are able to beat them now, this could be a couple fights away from a Weibo Gaming win.
Yeah, it certainly can be. And we know, asked for Weibo to put their foot down a little bit, right? Make some plays, and even though EDG kind of offered them up that dragon fight, being able to find that pick, that mid lane tier 1, and then immediately transition it into a Baron is the kind of decisiveness that Weibo needed to have with this kind of composition. They really need to make the most of this Baron, right? You're talking, at the very least, try and crack open this bottom side tier 3, I think, is likely going to end up being the transitional play here for Weibo, as a wave is being moved in by Breathe. And it doesn't really seem like they're going to be able to get too much chunk damage out of this mid lane tier 2. Let's see what they can actually get done down here on the bottom side. Because again, the scaling threat, the wave clear as well, is going to, again, regain its power as soon as this Baron is lost.
Arrow flies, it hits Tien. Xiaohao's gonna go in, tries to lock down the tank under the tower, forced to flash away, but Xiaohao gets completely annihilated. But the amount of damage that Weibo Gaming were able to put out as Light rips 1,000 spears out of the Monkey King's back. And now EDG, without a jungler, don't have really any more engage tools, as they used pretty much everything here, Jamada.
Yeah, they did, and it still seems like Weibo are gonna get the most out of all of this. 2 tier 2s, mid and bot. There's a top wave being pinged as well, so we'll see what Breeve's gonna end up doing here. As the arrow lands onto ZDZ, teleport's coming in as well. Breeve is a very tanky Ksante.
Yeah, tanks it up and barely loses, I want to say, more than 1/5 of his HP. Still has about 3/4 to play with. Hong goes in, forces a couple of summoner spells out of the teammates of EDG. They lose the inhibitor tower, but now have all 5 members once again. But meanwhile, Xiaohu in the mid lane, pressuring for that middle exposed inhibitor. These are 2 open structures now that Weibo Gaming can look for, but they've used a fair share of their tools. They don't want to have to risk anything else, but they have taken a crack open at the base for EDG, and now are setting up the pieces for a potential win here in game 1.
Yeah, I mean, job's done for the Baron. Cracked open the base. That's what they needed with this kind of composition and this kind of, you know, game state that we're in, moving into them picking up that Baron. And this Dragon, just kind of a, you know, not a necessity. What am I looking for here? It's just going to happen now that the side of EDG have been pushed back so far, and then they can just look to continue to suffocate EDG out of this game. It's going to be super difficult now that you're, you know, lacking so many structures, so many bastions of safety to be able to kind of step up to waves and wave clear for EDG. This is where the game gets hard to play when you've got this kind of scaling composition. You have no towers, you can't just kind of neutralize the game at mid lane tier 1 or a mid lane tier 2.
Yeah.
You have to sit really, really far back, and it just affords Weibo so much space.
Yeah, and for the first time, we're starting to see, you know, drastic item differences in a lot of the carries for Weibo Gaming versus EDG. Light having finished 3 items and the Terminus, that makes any marksman that buys it so deceptively hard to kill, because you are getting so many resistances off of the stacks as you ramp up. And so now for, you know, EDG, a somewhat low damage profile from the side of the bot lane. Now you have a Kalista who is extremely mobile and even tankier to kill. And Weibo Gaming pretty much have everything they need to close this game out off of one more solid fight. And I have to say, Jamada, Hong has looked really damn fun to watch in his first game with this Weibo Gaming roster so far.
He's willing to pull the trigger, man. That's the thing about Hong, you know. His 2023 year in particular was one where he really opened the eyes of a lot of LPL watchers. And then this year he was a lot more restrained, a little bit more calculated, but still very aggressive. And speaking of aggression, Breeve's gone forward here. He could very easily be taken down, and I think that is going to be what happens. Though he's Ksante-ing.
He's so damn taky, man. I mean, he finally goes all out and is just now dropping below 50% HP, and he still doesn't die. Meanwhile, Xiaohu is just wondering, hey guys, y'all doing good over there? And he's like, I'm taking this turret on the top side of the map. Breathe has done his job. His teleport is not coming up for quite some time, so he cannot rejoin if Weibo Gaming wanted to continue the siege. But Baron is spawning in the next 50 seconds. They've done what they can, and now getting that base in and getting ready for a Baron take that should give them the tools ready to make another siege.
Yep, that mid lane inhibitor is going to be big. Couldn't quite find that bottom side one. Who's going to get the last hit? Okay, you know, the observers, they have to hover over that to make sure that 90 gold is being picked up. But the Baron, right, is going to be where the focus will now be for Weibo. And again, when you really kind of take a bit of a zoom out, EDG just do not have, you know, that much information for the time being. Yes, they have that ward on the Baron, but it's going to expire very, very soon. And actually, Weibo, they're just looking to pull the trigger potentially. Xiaohao is going to use that clone out. So once that ward's gone, they're really going to be working with just about nothing. And again, you've got Hawkshot, yes, you've got a blue ward, cool. After that, you have to start sending bodies in, or you just don't know what's happening. This AShe arrow is just gonna fly barely wide on Xiaohu. And that's kind of that was their real only option in. If that arrow hits, then great, they can really try and take a foothold, get that pick, walk into the jungle together as 5 after they deal with their waves. Without that, now Weibo just kind of get to sit here in fog and be very, very threatening. And if you split up like this, EDG, one person getting caught out, you just lose the game.
Yeah, remember, EDG's composition is stronger when all grouped together. If they're ever split up, as Xiaohao was trying to look for the flank on the right side, and Weibo Gamer is just gonna pull Han! Pop Blossom! Flash over the wall! That's gonna set up the engage, and Xiaohu is completely isolating Assum from the rest of the fight, cannot assist with any of his fellow EDG comrades. The fight completely won and absolutely dominated by Weibo Gaming in a stellar Game 1 performance, and they'll be taking the first game of the series.
What an engage from Hong. 3-man Homer on the front line to really just put the nail in the coffin of EDG, and that will be game 1. Weibo, after the first 20 minutes, I was a little bit worried, but once they had that opportunity to pick up that Baron, it was all go, no breaks, and they will be moving into game number 2, 1 up over EDG.
For me, this would be a fun moment for Breathe to type in all chat, you know, 1v1 doesn't matter, you know, and just kind of set a little more pre-banter for the rest of the comrades. But, you know, probably all business from the side of Weibo Gaming. And for the rest of the audience, I think it was reasonable to have expectations that Weibo Gaming should be the favorites to win, despite you know, this is a new roster being put together, and obviously we're going to give them a little bit of breathing room of being able to come together. But look at the way Hong and Light played together so far. First stage game as a duo, and they've already kind of locked in this very aggressive, forward-thinking mindset.
Yeah, I mean, game number 1, it's looking good for Weibo. I have to say, I'm always going to be the first person to be critical of this organization, right? It's always going to be me. I will put my hands up, right? I am far from Weibo's lawyer. That said, that was an excellent looking, and yes, you can talk about the strength of the EDG lineup and you can go on about all of those kind of things, but still, getting a preliminary look at this Weibo, at the very least for this game number 1, looked great. We saw Light put in a position to really carry the game. You know, after that sort of 15-minute mark, they executed very, very well from that 3rd dragon out. Yes, some questions maybe to be asked from some of those kind of transitional moments after those first couple of dives at best, but then you're really nitpicking and looking for things to really try and drag Weibo down about. I feel like this was generally a pretty well fought game. I think they recognized they were on that timer, and once they recognized, they pulled the trigger. And again, EDG did not really have too many proactive tools, so this is one of those games where it's kind of easy to play when you're the one of the proactive tools and everything is super reactive on the other side, and on top of being reactive is incredibly late game scaling, right? Angel was going to need 3 items. I could go on, right? It was going to take a long time for EDG to come online here. Weibo knew that and abused it.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, anytime you are picking a heavy scaling composition, you are begging the other team to say, steamroll us, see what happens, you know? And Weibo Gaming said, bet, let's do it. And, you know, afterwards, CDZ in particular saying, hey guys, can we get some more agency next game? I don't want to be left alone.
Look, I think it's always very easy to criticize the Udyr pick, and trust me, I'll be one of the first to do it as well. That said, there wasn't really much CDZ could do. He was fulfilling a role, and the role was survive the weak side dives, right? That's what you picked the Udyr for. Pick up enough CS, and then hopefully just be, you know, annoying on a side lane, neutralize a side laner, be a frontliner in tanks, right? That's what the Udyr is about. I think for me, a lot of where this game fell apart for EDG was just that 3rd dragon call, right? The game state, by all intents and purposes, was kind of fine moving into it. They already had 2 dragons. Drop the 3rd one. Drop the 3rd one. You don't need to try and get to soul point. You're not the one that needs to put Weibo under a massive amount of pressure right then and there. Weibo had to do that for minute 1, and they hadn't actually done that through the objectives. So there's this fight right here, right? Allowing Hong to get this engage and then staying committed to this fight I think was just the big error. I say stay committed. ZDZ couldn't move once he started getting CC.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm not sure how did I don't think we're gonna get a replay of it. But however, the mid lane pick also happened onto Assum, right?
Shoot.
That enabled that Baron. We were in the replay, unfortunately. It's just nature of the broadcast. I feel.
Yeah. I to follow up on what you were talking about, I would almost argue that was what really broke EDG's momentum. You know, they only dropped one death in the third dragon fight, but the fact that Assum was down both summoner spells and Weibo Gaming